When speaking of the American justice system, I feel that there is no easy way to beat around the bush, so I like to get straight to the point. Our justice system is flawed, and one theory, I guess you could say, in trying to fix this justice system would be to incorporate restorative justice. Restorative justice views crime as more than just breaking the law. It focuses on repairing the harm that was committed by the crime and future crime prevention. It focuses more on reformation of the perpetrators and apologies and acknowledgement of issues that happened with the victims. So in Shannon Silva's TED Talk, How Restorative Justice Could End Mass Incarceration, she opens with statements regarding how people feel when something is done to them. Like, they would just wish for a genuine apology, and the ability to ask the questions of, like, why is this happening to me? How did it happen? Why was I the one who was chosen? Is not readily available to victims. One of the first things perpetrators hear when they are arrested is their Miranda rights, which you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. They are basically saying, don't acknowledge the crime, don't admit that you did it, because it will further injure your case against you. She goes on to say that for crime victims, the only real way to communicate is through private DA meetings or giving a statement in court in front of a whole bunch of people. And sometimes the perpetrator is not even allowed to look at you. So for people who can get over crime and begin to renew themselves after these violent and heinous acts have been committed against them, is to receive an apology, is to tell that perpetrator how they feel about what was done to them. Now, 50-70 people who leave prison often attend again within 3 years, but with the implementation of restorative justice, it drops to 8% of people reoffending and entering the system, and 95% of both victims and offenders are satisfied when they use means of restorative justice. So this means bringing together offenders, victims, and the affected communities to agree on how to repair the harms, and it's mainly used in cases of property theft and assault. The goal of the agreement is always to meet the needs that were facilitated by the crime and directing accountability towards the offender. So basically this means if Jack steals computers from his local electronics store, he could return the computers and work for them instead of going to jail. But for more heinous crimes, such as murder, it would make sense for somebody to spend time in prison. However, that does not mean let them sit and sulk in their misery and in the evil of the act that they have done. Instead, try to reform them and teach them ways to get back into society without implementing the death penalty or without using violent obstructions. So with restorative justice, there are 3 key ideas. The first one is repair, and that means to assess the crime and the harm that is caused, and justice needs to repair the harm. This basically means either a sentencing, an apology, some way that the victim feels that they have received justice. This restorative justice focuses really heavily on the victim and their emotions. The second big idea would be encounter, and this is if the parties decide to speak to each other, like I was speaking about earlier. When it's illegal in some states, even if both parties agree, both the victim and the offender, to meet, it's illegal for them to do that. But restorative justice allows that process to happen and allows those emotions to be thrown back and forth between both parties. The third big idea is transformation, and this causes fundamental change in both the victim and the perpetrator. This is where they get to say, I'm sorry, and you made me feel that. It's not the easiest way, but it is a good way to stop the harm and mass incarceration and private politics and policing issues. It's a good way to